All right, let's talk about something I'm willing to bet you felt firsthand, even if you couldn't quite put a name to it. It's called Parkinson's Law. You know that feeling, right? You've got this one simple thing to do. Maybe it should take 2 hours, tops, but you give yourself the whole afternoon. And what happens? Somehow that 2-hour task magically swells up and fills every single second. That weird, frustrating phenomenon? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. So let's kick things off with the version of Parkinson's Law that pretty much everyone knows, and let's be honest, probably fights against every day. This is the one that hits close to home, the one about our own to-do lists. And here it is, in all its glory. It's so simple and just painfully true, isn't it? You give yourself an hour for something, it takes an hour. But give that exact same task a whole week? Yeah, somehow it's going to take the whole week. It's the reason deadlines are, both a lifesaver and a total nightmare. Naturally, an idea this true has inspired some pretty witty spin-offs. Take the stock Sanford corollary. It's a classic. This is basically the official slogan for every student ever during finals week. It just perfectly captures that supernatural focus you can only find when a deadline is breathing down your neck. And then you've got the great Isaac Asimov, who saw a slightly darker side to it all. For him, it wasn't just that work expands. He realized that giving yourself more time could actually make you less productive. All those extra hours, they just turn into wide-open invitations for distraction, and you end up falling even further behind. Of course, the law got a 21st century update for the tech world. Anyone who's ever bought a bigger hard drive or paid for more cloud storage knows this one deep in their soul. It doesn't matter how much space you get, your digital stuff will magically expand to fill it all. The principle is exactly the same. Okay, so we get it. This is a law of personal time management, something we all deal with. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? Not even close. What if this idea about your to-do list was actually just a small piece of a much bigger, much more cynical observation about how things really work? And that brings us to the original Parkinson's Law. See, it was never about productivity hacks or getting your homework done on time. It was a sharp, almost savage critique of organizations, of how bureaucracies just seem to grow and grow for no good reason at all. And that's the absolute key difference here. The personal law is about you and your schedule. The organizational law, and this was the real point of his essay, is all about how entire companies, entire government departments just get bigger, even when their workload stays the same or even shrinks. So Parkinson himself was a naval historian, and he saw this paradox with his own eyes. He's looking at the British Empire, and it's shrinking. Fewer colonies to manage, right? But the number of people working in the colonial office was going up. Same thing with the Royal Navy. The fleet got smaller, fewer ships to command, but the number of administrators at the Admiralty, it multiplied. So you have less work, but more people. How on earth does that happen? Well, Parkinson didn't just point out this weirdness, he actually explained the mechanics behind it. He broke it down to 2 fundamental human drivers that fuel this unstoppable organizational bloat. Okay, so here's how it works. First, an official doesn't want to hire one person right below them. That person could become a rival for their job. No, it's much better to hire 2 subordinates. That way, you're not just a manager, you're the head of a little department. It makes you more important. And second, well, now these 2 new people need to justify their jobs, so they start making work for each other. Think memos, reports, meetings about meetings, all this new internal work. And pretty soon, they're so busy that they need to hire their own subordinates. It just feeds on itself. He even came up with this brilliant, fake mathematical formula to prove his point. And obviously, this was a joke, a total satire. He was poking fun at the idea that this bureaucratic growth was so predictable, so constant, you could almost write it out like a law of physics. And get this, he actually put a number on it. He said you could count on administrative staff growing by about 5 to 7% every single year. And here's the kicker, it happened irrespective of any variation in the amount of work to be done. It didn't matter if the company was booming or collapsing. The bureaucracy's main job was just to get bigger. Think about what that means. Budgets and staff numbers just keep going up, completely disconnected from what the organization is actually supposed to be doing. But Parkinson wasn't done yet. He took that same sharp, cynical eye and turned it towards another beloved feature of office life, the committee meeting. He had a few things to say about why those giant meetings so often feel like a complete waste of time. He came up with this fantastic term, the coefficient of inefficiency. The basic idea was that you could actually calculate the precise moment a committee becomes totally useless just by how many people are sitting around the table. So what's the magic number? 21. Parkinson's theory was that once you hit about 21 people in a room, the whole thing grinds to a halt. It becomes completely ineffective. You can't have a real discussion, and any actual decisions get made by a tiny secret group before the big meeting even happens. Sound familiar? And just like before, he pulled from history to back it up. He pointed to English government. You see this cycle over and over again. A small effective group gets power, then it starts to grow. And as it gets bigger, it gets more inefficient, it loses its real power, and eventually a new, smaller, more powerful group has to be formed to actually get things done. And then, well, this cycle just starts all over again. So you have to wonder, how did this witty, sarcastic essay about the British civil service become this serious global management theory that people still talk about today? The journey is actually pretty fascinating. Yeah, it's so important to remember this whole thing started out as a joke. It was a satirical piece in The Economist back in 1955. Parkinson wasn't trying to start a revolution in management theory. He was just making a really sharp, funny point. But his observations were so relatable, so true to life for so many people, that the idea just kind of exploded and took on a life of its own. I mean, that's the real power of the law. It just seems to apply everywhere. There's this great story from 1986. An Italian leader is complaining about his own country's bureaucratic mess, and you know who chimes in? Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union. And he says, Parkinson's law works everywhere. I mean, come on. When an idea works for both the British Empire and the Soviet Union, you know you've stumbled onto a deep human truth. So why are we still talking about this today? Well, because it works on two totally different levels, right? On a personal level, it's a super practical reminder. Set shorter deadlines, be deliberate with your time. But then there's the bigger picture. It's a critical lens you can use to look at your company or your government and ask the tough questions. Is all this growth, all these new positions and meetings actually helping us get things done? It really is just a timeless insight into how we operate both on our own and in big groups. So from now on, when you're stuck in a meeting with 25 people and nothing's getting decided, or when you watch a simple task somehow inflate to fill a 3-week deadline, you'll know what to call it. But the real question is for you. Now that you know both sides of the law, the personal and the organizational, where do you see Parkinson's law working its magic in your world?